Welcome back to the Shining Light Press podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Lopez. We have a new guest with us here today. Lately, we have been interviewing candidates running for governor of New Mexico. We have interviewed people like Karen Vidoni, Greg Zanetti. We even interviewed someone who ran for mayor, Alexis Martinez Johnson, here in the city of Santa Fe. And today, we are interviewing a candidate who is running for Secretary of State. And in fact, she is the only Republican candidate challenging Maggie Toulouse Oliver, the current Secretary of State. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Audrey Trujillo. Audrey, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Thanks, Eddie. Freddie.
You're welcome, no problem. So as we're getting started, who is Audrey Trujillo and why has she decided to run for the important position of Secretary of State?
Well, throughout my years, I have worn many hats, let's put it that way. So first of all, I'm a mother, I'm a New Mexican, I'm a daughter, and I'm a citizen of this great country. And one of the things that we've seen throughout these last couple of years is this push for progressive, this progressive movement, which is, I wouldn't even call it progressive. I think it's regressive. But what we're doing is we're allowing these people to divide our country, divide our state, divide our people in order for a few to just be able to take control of us. And we've seen that throughout government. We've seen it through, just everything that we've seen. Our media has been doing this, our school systems. We were talking earlier about, the problems that are going on with the schools with this COVID-19 and how they're essentially using it as a ways to control the parents and allowing our kids to be vaccinated with something that we just do not, a lot of us don't feel very comfortable with. So that's partial of what I'm doing. I've been a big time conservative advocate and constitutionalist. You've probably seen me out there with my flag and with a lot of different rallies and petitions and protests, against these things that I feel that are unconstitutional and being forced on our American citizens. We live in America. We're supposed to be a beacon of hope. Other countries are supposed to be looking at us as hope. And the way I see it, we're no better right now as what we're seeing within our own government than any other country that's communist. We start off with socialism. I think we're past that. I think we're really going into the communist area, which is really scary because, especially because I am a mother, I have children, I don't want to leave a future like this for them. So the question was, going back to your question, which is a complicated one. I decided to run for Secretary of State when I saw the very inconsistencies in this last election. I feel that a lot of people, whether we can prove it or not, feel that this election was stolen. And on my perspective, it really doesn't even matter based on what the perception is. But the biggest thing is people have lost confidence in our election. The confidence is no longer there, for many of us. I've heard it over and over, I'm not even going to go vote because it doesn't count. Our votes aren't counting, and during this emergency orders where our governor and our Secretary of State increased their powers during this time, and we're allowed to change rules and change laws and, all under the disguise of this pandemic that they called a pandemic. We saw a lot of unfortunate things happen within the Secretary of State position as well. And some of those things were, a lot of people were disenfranchised on voting in person, and that was, one of the things that most individuals take a lot of pride in, is going to their precinct or to their poll area and voting in person. And that was, made very hard for a lot of people where they moved precincts, they closed precincts. Some people went, an hour to 2 hours out to go to a precinct that they thought was open. They get there and the precinct's closed. So a lot of things like that, make me upset on the way the agency was run, and I call it an agency because the Secretary of State is an agency within itself, and it has many other agencies underneath. So, I just want to bring back confidence into our people in the voting process. And I want to make sure that we aren't just saying, integrity, fair elections. We're actually doing it, because I see that word used very loosely within this Secretary of State and the last Secretary of States that were in there prior. And I don't see there's much integrity or fairness or anything within the system that we have right now. And that's going to take a lot of rule changing, or maybe tightening up some of these rules that apparently are loosened during these times of pandemic or any kind of emergencies.
Very well said, very well said. And I actually have a story here. This was published by the Republican Party of New Mexico, in which they claim, saying, quote, "The New Mexico Secretary of State's office has been derelict in its duty to provide possible candidates with vital information for the 2022 campaigns and elections." And what this is coming from is many people believe that the current Secretary of State, including her office, is not doing their job, that they don't feel that she is doing an adequate job of getting the necessary information for candidates to get on the ballot, whether it be petitions or things like that. And as Secretary of State, what would you do on that front to make sure that there is adequate confidence and leadership within the Secretary of State's office?
Absolutely. Well, in my position, I would believe that voting and all these other positions that go underneath the Secretary of State, they should be nonpartisan. And I feel like this current Secretary of State is very partisan in her decisions and what she's been doing. It only helps the Democrat Party, what she's been doing. And you can see it, and it's very blatant on the rules that she's loosened and the things that have been changed, and just not protecting the vote in general. And for me, I would not look at this position as a partisan. I'm not going to be running for the Republican Party. I'm not running for the Democrat Party. I'm not running for the Independent Party. I'm running for the people of New Mexico. And that's what we need to focus on. The people of New Mexico want fair votes. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat that gets elected, or it's a Republican or an independent, as long as our votes are counting and everybody's votes count. So I would definitely take away the partisan game that they're playing right now. I think that's unfair to everybody, and I don't agree with it. I think we need to be fair, especially when it comes to elections, because that is a right that many countries don't have. And it's a sacred right.
Absolutely. The right to vote is part of our country and part of any other country. And as you mentioned, many countries do not have the right to vote, or not to vote at all. It's just purely totalitarian, and that's the way to put it. And another question I have is, recently, in the last mayoral election in the city of Santa Fe, with Alexis Martinez Johnson, Joanne Villacopper, the incumbent mayor, whoever who was reelected, there was, as of right now, there are 60,000 registered voters in the city of Santa Fe. Only 18,000 of them, 18,000 voted in the last mayoral election, which is about 30%. And with that kind of turnout, it's even the last election was at least 40%, so it was just below 50%. It's dropped. And with that kind of drop in voter turnout, it's very discouraging and very just disgraceful to see.
Yeah, it is.
And as Secretary of State, what would you do to make sure that people have the right to vote, and people say, listen, it doesn't matter who you're going to vote for, your vote's going to count. How are you going to get that idea out there, that message across, so that voter turnout can be increased?
Mm-hmm. Again, we see that partisan play even with this mayoral race. We also have the ranked choice voting that was implemented by Maggie Toulouse as well. And I don't agree with that. I think the winner takes all. I think whoever gets the most votes is the one that should be winning. We shouldn't be playing, because they're very costly also. We're throwing away money on these recounting and what is it called? Ranked choice voting, because you have to go in, and if they don't get 51% of the vote, then they have to do another voting process, and that costs money. I think we can save the state a lot of money and simplify the process and make sure that each vote counts. Number one, we're not voting dead people. We should also be cleaning our voter I lost my words. Voter, yes. And that shouldn't be done every 2 years or prior to an election. That should be done, I would say, every month, because things change for people. Every time you turn around, people are moving, people are dying. There's just no way to have accurate rolls if we're not cleaning them and making sure that every county does the same thing, and we do the same thing across the board. And I see that there's a lax in that. We have people that are still in there, 120-year-old people still voting, people that are not living in the state voting from other states, and that's a problem. So if we really want to have fair elections, we got to clean up those voter rolls for sure. And this ranked choice voting, I just don't think it's being done properly. I think it's used to manipulate our votes. And I think we saw that in Santa Fe. I've seen that twice happen already there. The first election, we had it was Ronald Trujillo, and he was a native born. He was there, he was on the city council, he had done his time. And, a lot of people went out and voted for him. We were down there helping them out as well. And, he was one of us, the New Mexicans from here. We get Weber in, and all of a sudden this guy comes out of nowhere. No one knows him. And he gets voted in over a native New Mexican. How does that happen? There is shenanigans happening, because we know that if anybody else that questions authority of any of the upper people that are in charge, they're not going to be the elections are not going to be done fairly. And there's so much open ways to scrutinize those elections, and that starts with your county clerks. These county clerks, the one that we had prior there, she had 3 pensions. I believe she was, every time she was reelected in her position, which there is no, I don't believe that they have limits for how long they, as long as they keep getting elected, these county clerks can keep their office. Well, she kept getting elected, and every time she'd get a raise. So, it was just kind of fishy. I mean, we don't have anything to prove otherwise. We probably have to do a major internal audit and see what was really going on there. But she was part of that process. It took a long time for them to come up with that results. And the, like you were saying, the population wasn't that big. With when you see that happening, when they're taking longer to count votes, there's some funny business going on. There should not be that, it should not happen. And that's where you lose confidence in the elections, because you start, even if they were to do that, why are they spending $52 million on Dominion machines that are supposed to make this process easier? And they're not. So, that's my point on those elections. We just got to make sure that, we don't have these people in office that are part of the problem and part of this corruption.
Absolutely. And another thing about the city of Santa Fe was with Alexis Martinez Johnson, when she was running for mayor, who I was actively involved with, we had seen quite a bit of support, not only for her, but also for Coffee too. And it was it just amazed us when the results were coming in, how there was just a massive discrepancy. And many people in Santa Fe said, we don't understand ranked choice voting. They ended up just putting just one candidate instead of multiple candidates that ranked choice voting as you do. And it is just, something like that is just very confusing for voters. And it's just, it's just really outrageous.
And I think it's on purpose. It's on purpose, because you get, the process should be easy. It should be simple. And when they put ranked choice voting and stuff like that in, it complicates everything. And these people that normally are just like, oh, I just want to go in, get out and go vote, they won't go vote because they're like, I don't even get this thing. You know, it's too complicated. They won't even vote, or they'll do it wrong. You know, a lot of the things that I heard was people were just voting for one person and leaving everything else blank. I mean, the process is just, it doesn't work. You know, it works only when it works for those Democrats that they want to keep in office.
Exactly. And sorry about that. I was just moving something out of the way. But and I think that is a perfect segue, as you had mentioned, forensic audits. And before I get into that question, how do you feel about voter ID, but you're showing an ID to vote? Because we have seen in states like Texas and Georgia, and their votes like that, and we hear people claim that those votes are inherently racist, even though I don't understand that myself. So how would you feel about voter?
That as a racist thing.
Yeah.
I do agree that we should have voter ID. I think if you are living here as a citizen, you should have some sort of ID, whether it's a license, whether it's just, I mean, you have to have an ID to drive, number one. You have to have an ID to go in and go to the bank, to identify yourself, to take out money. You have to have an ID to even get a job. You know, everything requires an ID. Why are we not requiring an ID for voting? And it's because what they try to use is this different, you know, oh, we're, you know, you're being racist, or we're not, you know, not everybody can afford an ID. Well, you know what? We would save so much money by not having all these crazy elections that we shouldn't be having to pay for. Where if you get the person that has, you know, got the most votes, they win, period. Instead of you know, messing with this whole rank choice or these different things that cost us taxpayers money. You know, if they would just focus on even just, you know, giving an identification for these people that can't afford one, which I don't know how that can be, you know, make it affordable, you know, make it affordable to be able to get an ID, or create some kind of program, which, you know, New Mexico is great for social programs. Why don't we create a program to allow, you know, those people that don't have the ability to purchase an ID to get an ID, because it would help them in the long run. A lot of people can't get a job because they don't have an ID, but it's also because they're not here legally, or they have extended their time here, you know, through their visas and just not went through the process. So we've got to change a lot of things, and it's not just in the Secretary of State, but voting is the biggest issue. And without our votes being protected, we are going to continue to get what we're getting right now, and we're being disenfranchised, I believe.
Absolutely, that is absolutely correct. And when it comes to forensic audits, we saw probably the largest audit that was done as of recently, which was in Arizona. That didn't come out the way people expected it would, but people still would like to see audits like that happen for transparency, for accountability, to see what was going on. And as Secretary of State, would you conduct a forensic internal audit here in New Mexico?
Absolutely. I think, you know, to build our confidence back in the people, whether regardless of what we find out, we need to do a forensic audit. We need to know that our votes are being counted, and people need to know, our voters need to know that when you register to vote, you know, you're going to go and vote for the person you want. And your votes aren't going to be thrown in the trash, or they're not going to be manipulated or whatever, you know. Even if it's none of it's real, maybe, you know, they come out with, okay, everything is perfect, we've been doing great elections all these years. Well, the people don't believe that, and that's the problem. And we're not going to have people going out and voting and participating in elections if they don't believe that their votes are being taken care of, that things are on the up and up.
Yes, exactly. That is a very fair point to make. And when you talk about partisanship, Maggie Toulouse, the current incumbent, she is, you know, extremely partisan. In fact, recently, as reported by John Block of the New York Post, he reported that Maggie Toulouse is teaming up with Stacey Abrams, the candidate who ran for governor of Georgia. Now, many people say, you know, do you believe, you know, the election was stolen or whatnot? Well, if you look at Hillary Clinton and Stacey Abrams, they repeatedly refer to their elections as stolen, and they repeatedly doubt theirs. And yet you see no one criticizing them. You see no one saying you're destroying our democracy and whatnot. So when you see that kind of partisanship, her coming up with someone like that, that really puts a damper on, the reputation of the Secretary of State's office. Would you agree?
Well, definitely red flags pop up. I mean, that's again, you go back to the confidence of the elections and the confidence of the office. And I think she's been doing a great job on making those people lose confidence instead of doing the job that she was put in there. And the job of the Secretary of State is to secure your votes, secure the votes of registered voters, and making sure that these people know that when they go and vote, their votes are sacred, they're protected, and it's done with the highest integrity as possible. But time and time again, we keep losing confidence because of the I don't even know what you want to call them, shenanigans that they were doing during this whole pandemic. I mean, we got to witness so many things happening. One of the things that happened was, my parents are from northern New Mexico, and they were one of the counties that were their precincts were taken down. And they're old school, they don't like putting stuff in the mail. They don't agree with the absentee ballots. They want to go in there and put in their votes and make sure it goes through the machine, and they want to make sure that they get their little number. Well, during that time, they closed all those precincts, claiming that there was no internet access. And then what makes no sense is that here they were saying, oh, well, these machines were not connected to the internet. So there's like so much, what's the truth? And then the biggest deal was that they sent out a letter to all these people, McKinley County, Rio Arriba, and there's a few other ones that were on this list of counties where they had taken down their precincts for whatever reason. And they sent a letter out telling them, if you don't send this letter back signed, then you automatically are going to get a absentee ballot in the mail. Well, that's never been heard of. My parents, during that time, it's during election time, and everybody's getting tons and tons of mailings from all your candidates and everything else. So you already have a ton of mail coming through. So just fortunately, my mom opened this piece of mail and she called me and she said, Audrey, what does this mean? And she's like, I'm confused. She goes, we don't want to vote absentee. We're going to go vote in Espanola, which is another 45 to an hour minutes away from where they're at, because they didn't want to mail in their ballots. And it's basically, I told her, go send it to me so I can see it and I can read it. Well, basically what it said is at the bottom of this page, it basically said, if you do not sign this, you automatically will get sent out an absentee ballot. So whoever received that letter had to send it back to the Secretary of State. And that's unheard of, because normally to get an absentee ballot, you are required to ask for that absentee ballot. And you're supposed to fill out information and send it back to him saying, I want an absentee ballot. Not that I don't want to have an absentee ballot. So it's very confusing. They used a lot of stuff to confuse the people, like you had just mentioned earlier. Make it confusing, confuse the voters. And that's what we saw. And that's why I say people lost confidence.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the point with absentee ballots. In the state of California, the governor, Gavin Newsom, literally right before the recall election that he had survived, he had signed into a law which essentially said every single, and it was done during the context of the pandemic, then he signed a law now that every single registered voter, regardless if they requested or not, would get a ballot through the mail and they could send it through the mail. And there are people who don't want to do that. They just want to go out to the polls, put the signature, or put the check mark next to the person they want to be in office, instead of doing all of these shenanigans. And it really hampers confidence in our elections, as you have mentioned. And my question to you is, this goes in depth to what you do as Secretary of State. We have many voter rolls that are people who haven't voted in a very long time, people who have been deceased. What is your plan to look through the voter rolls and clean everything out to make sure it is accurate and up to date?
Well, number one, I want to investigate how they're doing it right now, because we have to see how they're doing it. We got to know the ins and outs of what is happening right now. How often it's being done. What are they coordinating with agencies such as the vital statistics? So when people die, are they automatically sent in a form saying this person's died, take that person out? We got to work together within the system that we already have, but I think we can streamline it where we're not just, it's not just the Secretary of State. It should be all of us put together. The DMV should be part of this process as well. DMV, as soon as they see that there's someone that is moved to another state, that information should automatically filter into whatever system that we have. So, we can do that. We have the capability and the technology. We don't have to pay $52 million to upgrade Dominion machines that obviously did not build any confidence. If anything, it did the opposite. Let's put the money where it needs to go. Let's work on the agencies that can help keep our voter rolls clean and easy, and make it a very simplified process. I mean, I think what I have seen is the voting process has become so it's not simplified. It's created to just, like I said, disenfranchise people, make it hard, make it seem like it's such a process that's not easy. We can't do that. Secretary of State should make it they're supposed to make voting simple, simplify it, make it easy for people to go and vote. Make sure it's safe, make sure your votes count, make sure that people are able to even go back and say, I want to make sure I voted, and if they're going to use technology, why can't we use technology to make sure that we voted and who we voted for? I mean, there should be some ways to do that. And I think I would love to just look into that type of new methods where you can actually go in and put in your number that you're given at the voting, when you go and turn in your votes, and you can go back and make sure that your votes have not been changed and you are voting for who you voted for. I mean, I have no idea why that process is not available. They should be able to do that. Those are obviously your votes. I'm not saying have everybody have access to that. Just the person that voted should have access to their own ballot.
That is a very good idea. That's a very good idea. There's also another idea when it comes to on election day. We have heard people use the phrase election day should be a federal holiday. That way people can be emphasized to go out and vote. And not only that, there's another idea which I've noticed that not many people mention this idea, where public transportation should be free on that day so that people can get on a bus or on a taxi, or taxis don't exist anymore, but on a bus or Uber, whatever the case may be, to get out and vote, get out easier to get to the polling place. And are you in favor of that type of idea as well on election day to get that voter turnout?
We can work with I know that they do those things like for New Year's, for drunk driving, making sure that people get places safely. I think that's what we should do for voting. We can set aside some of that money that we save from having all these crazy elections that make no sense, and use that money towards things like that. Be able to take our individual people that do not have rides, our elderly, our seniors, so they can feel confident that they're able to go and vote the way they want to vote. And like I said, we're not going to eliminate absentee ballots, because there is a reason for those. You have people that are overseas that want to vote in our elections. You have those people that are working out of town and have, really still want to vote, but they're working legitimately out of town. Or you have people that are disabled and just, don't have a ways to go to the voting polls. But we can do all that and continue to do that to help the people. We're not trying to make it harder. We just want to make sure that it's our confidence is back. And how do you do that? How do you build that confidence? You make people believe and understand that their votes are going to be counted. And the process of voting is sacred, and it's still sacred till this day in New Mexico, and we need to keep it that way.
Absolutely, I agree there. And got a couple more questions, and this is probably the biggest one. If you are elected as Secretary of State of New Mexico, what are the first steps you will take to implement voter integrity and election integrity?
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Oh, I'm
Can you
sorry.
repeat that? Mhm.
Sure. If you're elected as Secretary of State, what are the steps that you would take to implement voter integrity, election integrity, and if, let's say, the legislature passes a law that emphasizes voter integrity and election integrity, would you support that? And what are the steps you would take?
I would support any legislature that would support integrity and honesty in our elections. I would definitely make sure that I would be, helpful on ways that we can do that with our legislatures. Again, I am not a rule maker or a lawmaker. What I want to do is make sure that they understand the problems that we're facing within the organization of the Secretary of State, and work together. We need to work together because, like I said, this is not a partisan position. I know we are, Republican, Democrat, Secretary of States, and it is partisan within our state, but in reality, it shouldn't be. I truly believe that this is something that we all can work together. This is something that can unify our and unite our New Mexicans, because we can all agree we just want our votes to count. We want the people that we are voting in a majority to be elected. We don't want people just basically hand-picked and put in there. So, confidence is the biggest thing. We got to build that confidence. And if we don't build that confidence, people are not going to participate in our elections. So definitely, I would support any legislation that is going to help me do that.
Yes, absolutely. And it seems like you have a very good plan. You have a very good plan, and you have mentioned with the Secretary of State being nonpartisan. I do believe that you as a candidate, you would definitely get rid of the partisanship. You would definitely give people a reason why they should vote, because you are giving trust. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, whatever the case may be. If you go out and vote, your vote should be counted no matter what. And even if it's results that we do not agree with, it should be, we should at least know that, hey, at least it was safe, we were confident in it was done correctly and things like that. And this actually went by pretty quick. I thought this would be a little bit longer, but so my final question to you is this. Once you win the nomination and you become the nominee against -2 Oliver, how will you convince Democratic voters who are the majority in the state to vote for you? To not look at the partisanship politics about it and why they should elect you.
Well, number one, I'm not running for this position for the Republican Party or for any other party. I'm running for the people. I believe the people's votes count, and I believe that we should have integrity within all our agencies, and that includes the Secretary of State. I think everyone deserves to believe that their votes count, and they should not be played around with rules and crazy stuff that is basically pulled out of a hat, like we saw. And the confidence needs to be there. And that's the biggest thing, bring back the confidence back into our elections, make sure that we are electing those people that we want in office, and also make sure that we don't disenfranchise anybody. We got to open up to Native Americans. We got to open up all these different entities that have been jerked around during this time when elections are so crucial. Their voices need to be heard. Everybody's voices need to be heard. And the voice that you have is your vote, and it's very sacred. And I will protect that till the end.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I let you go, how can people support you? Where can they find you? How can people watch you as you go on through this process?
Well, I'm very, let's see, I have a website. So my website is Audrey, Audrey, And it's True Hero, TRUEHERO, and number 4, SOS.com. You can go in there and read more about me, my background, my education, what I've been up to since my plan to run for Secretary of State. I am also on Facebook as Audrey Trujillo. You can just Google me. I think I maxed out on my friends, but you can also follow me there. I have a campaign page as well on Facebook, and it's Audrey for We the People of New Mexico. That's also, you can follow me on there as well. I post a lot of the things that I'm doing. I'm talking to people across the state of New Mexico. This is a statewide seat. I want to make sure to listen to the people and what they went through during this time and why they feel that, they don't want to go out and vote. Like you said, we had a very big decrease in voter participation. So we need to know what is going on. Why did that happen? Is it the leadership? Is it the rules? Is it, what made that happen? And we want to make sure we take care of that. We do not bring that to the future administration. We want to make sure it's taken care of, and we bring back the confidence back to the people.
Sounds absolutely wonderful. And that concludes this episode of the Shining Light Press podcast. I do want to mention a couple of things to you off the record, but want to thank everyone who tuned in to the show today. Thank you for watching. You can, I will add the links to her website and her Facebook on the link in the description below once this is uploaded. And thank you so much for coming on to the show, Audrey. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you again for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for keeping up the fight in New Mexico and being a crucial part of all of our movements there.
You are welcome. You're very welcome. Have a good day, everyone. Please be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if YouTube somehow decides this is not appropriate enough, you can also follow me on Rumble, subscribe to us there, and we will see you soon.